Welcome to the Libertarian Atheists Skypecast. Today is Thursday, February 9th, 2017. Today we have Jeremy, Heather, Betsy, Adam, Jonathan, and Curran. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
And yes, we have moved the Skypecast to Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Central because it seems to work better for some of us anyway.
It's the biggest group so far, so it works out real good already.
Yeah, awesome.
Definitely.
So I'm glad you could join us today, Curran. And I'm glad you came back, Jonathan.
Yeah, just figured it's good. It's a better time on Thursday than Saturday with my schedule, what I'm doing, so the evening works a little better.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. You know, it's Jeremy and I. It's our only day off with the fam, so it's a better day for us to do it.
All right.
All right. So, Jeremy, you want to give us a?
Yeah. So, of course, like last time, we'll just kind of start with some current event discussion. Probably the story that I've seen gathering the most buzz over the past few days is the Trump appointee for Department of Education, and I can't remember the
Betsy DeVos.
Betsy DeVos, yes.
How could you forget?
Yeah, we're so ashamed, Jeremy.
I was thinking DeVos, whatever. I just couldn't remember the first name.
I don't know how to pronounce it correctly either.
So yes. So anyway, there's been the controversy about discussion from certain politicians that think, maybe we don't need a Department of Education. I think we could all agree with that here. Mm-hmm. Whether we're, Trump supporters or not, but as libertarians, cutting government is pretty much always a good thing.
Yep. I mean, I have heard some arguments from some libertarians saying that, she wants to put, education back into the hands of the state. I don't know myself that much. I haven't really read up on her as much as I should have, so. But does anybody know if that's true or not?
I'm not sure. She is a supporter of charter schools and having the money follow the student instead of just having this giant pool of money that school districts can just use however, and then they don't have outcomes, and the kids don't have the power to go to the schools that they want to go to or that their parents want them to go to.
Right.
So I think that's good, but I don't know how it would work exactly.
Now here's something kind of ironically would work out in the libertarian position's favor is this headline from NBC News. DeVos backlash sees parents threatening to homeschool kids. Well,
so they'll pull them out because she's going to change from public schools.
Good. Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Let the leftists homeschool their kids.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for the kids because considering what they're going to learn, but at least they'll get them out of the government schools, and it might prove to them that they don't need the government schools.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious to who has kids in school at this point in time.
Well, we do.
In the group?
Yep. We got a daughter that's 10. She's in 5th grade, and then we have a son that's 17, and he's in high school. So, junior.
So I lived in Japan previously, and this is my first year sending my kids to a U.S. school, and I have to say I pretty much assumed that most of the talk about Common Core was just a bunch of hyperbole, and dear God, it is not.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
It is. No. It is horrible. And my daughter has regressed in her skills in math in particular.
Yeah.
Wow. How old are your kids,
I
John?
believe it.
6 and 10.
Okay.
So one is in 1st grade, and he's, fine, but it's kind of hard to say at this point. And then my daughter is in 4th grade, but she's actually going backwards.
Year. In 4th grade is that year when they start to shift that curriculum for kids, and it becomes tougher.
Yeah, because they're moving beyond just the most basic arithmetic at that point. Start learning fractions and decimals, multiplication, division, things like that. So.
Well, I mean, the problem is that what I can see anyway as the problem is that they don't want to teach just one way of doing anything anymore, which I don't have a problem with in and of itself. But before the kids even have a concrete grasp on what it is they're learning, they're teaching them 10 other ways to do it and how to build mental models of how to do it. And these are all kind of things that I think most of us come to naturally as we just do it.
Uh-huh.
Right.
But they are teaching them these things, and then so there'll be one problem, and they'll say use one of these 6 different methods to solve it.
Oh my
and
gosh.
then sometimes they'll say use this method or use that method, and my daughter will look up at me and say, I can't even remember what this method is, and it's a nightmare. And
It really is.
My daughter has absolutely regret.
You were cutting out there a little bit, John.
Is he gone? John?
Okay, we have
Oh, there's a
technical
button.
some technical difficulties going on now. Okay. I mean, to John's point, though.
I'm sorry, I lost you guys for a second.
Oh, that's okay.
I was going to ask if you're supplementing your daughter's education that she's not getting in the government schools. Are you doing anything?
I have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to. We've imported a bunch of Japanese. Well, I think they have it here. Kumon.
Okay.
It's like after school tutoring thing, but we've purchased a bunch of their books just to keep her on course. But that only keeps her up to what she should be. I can't help her when it comes to use this method, use that. I mean, there's so many times when I'm looking at that.
I'm in a neighborhood with a lot of
Yeah.
yeah.
There's some bandwidth issues
Sorry,
going on, it sounds
I'm
like.
making dinner at the same time.
Oh, okay,
I
okay.
Oh,
hope
it's
you brought
bubble
enough
wrap.
for everyone.
It sounded like pasta going in the pot.
It was rice going in the pot.
Ah, okay. No,
Uncle Ben's.
I'm looking
No,
up.
no. I lived in Japan. Remember? No.
Oh,
the good stuff.
Sacrilegious crap here.
Oh, the good brown rice.
No, well, no. The kind that the next step is washing it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yes, it's the whole
You
kernel.
probably grew it. Did you grow it?
No,
Is it-
no patties here.
Is it short grain, medium grain, or long grain?
It's medium grain. So I'll total off the beaten path here. If you told me 16 years ago that I'd be able to tell you the difference between run rice and another rice when we're just dealing with white rice, I'd have laughed at you. But now I'm like,
Now you're laughing at us.
Yeah, I'm a rice snob. So
Real rice.
Oh, I don't blame you.
So,
I don't blame you.
That's the rice kind of sears over in the Orient. Now you brought up the Kumon math method, which I wasn't really personally familiar with. So I went ahead and looked it up. Basically, created by the Kumon Educational Company in Japan, and
yeah. So it's a private. They kind of view it as a tutoring service.
Right.
Now the thing is that if you live in Japan, it's just like a given that you're gonna send your kid to some after-school school. Japan has a lot of problems. One of them is its outlook towards education. So it's pretty typical, especially by the time you're nearing the end of middle school or in high school, that you're not going to get home before 10 o'clock.
Wow.
Wow, that's
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
that's horrendous.
And then
So
you
you're going to go
pay,
to school.
you pay out
What's
of pocket. You pay out of pocket for that, for those
Yes.
extra tutoring. Wow.
Yes, it's about. So you're like not a good parent if you don't send your kid to one of these. You're just setting your kid up for failure in Japan.
that just kind of speaks to, in general, in Japan they have that insane work ethic.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not all good. I mean, like in all things in life, there's an up and a down to it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, of course, hard work of course has its benefits, but I mean, you have to have that balance in your life where there's some downtime or at least time to pursue, some recreational interests. And I from what I understand, in the past decade or more or so, they've kind of shifted away from that mentality in Japan, because they're the famous I guess the narrative back in the 80s of the really competitive corporate environment in Japan, guys putting in 80, 100 hours, whatever weeks, they basically lived out of their office.
Oh, that's still very much the case.
Is
So-
it? Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's absolutely still the case.
Wow.
So, but you say competitive, and it's not that it's not competitive, but it's not competitive in the way that the U.S. is competitive.
Expand on that.
When it comes to business and the corporate environment, the Japanese are pretty socialist, right? So nobody succeeds by themselves, nobody fails by themselves. It's competitive, but it's Sony against Sharp, it's Panasonic against so on and so forth. None of your successes are your own, and none of your failures are your own.
Right.
You rise and fall as a unit, and that's the kind of competitiveness of it.
It's team versus team, basically.
Yeah. It's there. Nobody wants to be. So Japan's having a hard time right now trying to adapt itself to the U.S. way of doing things and U.S. corporate culture, because increasingly a lot of its CEOs are foreign now, of their major companies. So they're having a really hard time with this, and vice versa as well. So there's been a rise in suicide linked to it. So it's pretty interesting.
That is interesting.
John, I have a question in regards to children and Common Core.
Uh,
Could it be that they're trying to teach multiple methods that can cause confusion instead of one method? They're trying to teach critical thinking skills, but given the age of your children, they may not be ready for that kind of input where they're given multiple ways of solving something. Could it be partially inappropriate?
So, like I said, these are a lot of the things they teach are things that I kind of taught myself, and I'm guessing many of you did too. As I was young, as I would just learn mental shortcuts to figure things out, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's fine because it's an organic growth that you kind of pick up on your own. So rounding numbers to kind of get an approximate to use as a reality check against what your final answer is, that's fine. But I mean, they literally teach I'm trying to remember the question she had the other night, where it was they wanted to check her estimate against her answer. Now, what I mean by that is not check her answer against the estimate, but I mean they literally reversed it, right? So they're saying, do this problem. This is the answer you get. Does that make sense? Check it against this estimate, and that would have been. I mean, that's
backward. That does seem backwards.
it is. It's very
Well, it
backwards,
is backwards,
and they teach and I'm not joking, 5 to 6 different methods for everything. So one's going to be for the visual people, right? And if you're visually gifted, then they're gonna teach that one, and then one's going to be for the more analytical kids, and they're going to teach all these different methods. And I'm not opposed to kids having these different methods, but figure out which kids are struggling, and then teach them teach them in the way that they excel in.
Mm-hmm.
But making these kids learn all 6 methods, it overwhelms my daughter. And to the point where she forgets how to do just the basic stuff. She's so overwhelmed that it just shuts her down.
Where did they get this stuff from? Did they borrow it from some private schools like Montessori? Where did they get this technique from?
So from what I've read on it, it was largely funded through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who kind of took a very analytic, data-driven approach to how they were going to teach, and I don't have a problem with it in concept, but again, I think what they did is they went, well, look, when they taught this way, these kids figured it out, whereas they couldn't before. And then when they taught this way, these kids figured it out, whereas they couldn't before. And instead of going, hey, guess what? Kids aren't cookie cutter. Different methods work better for different students. Instead of going, all right, so find which students work best with which, they went, we found 6 different methods. And if we teach them all, then all the kids will know. And all the kids are now confused out of their gourds because they cannot keep it all straight.
Are you able to determine, can you try to look into the future and see if any of this stuff is going to be practical for your children to use. I'm thinking of the SATs that we took and how useless they were in life. So
I'm going to say no. I would say no, and the reason I say no is because, like I said, she is regressing in her ability to retain this. I mean, she's 10 years old, and you're asking her to remember 6 different ways to multiply, 6 different ways to, everything that they do is always, there's 6 different ways. And it's so frustrating because she's like, I know the answer. Here's the answer. This is the answer. And I look at it and, yep, that's right. That's the answer. And she'll get it wrong because she didn't use the right,
Oh my gosh.
the right method of the 6 different methods, right? Or she messed up one part of it, or she got the right answer, but she did one part of it using the wrong method, and therefore the whole thing's wrong.
That is
It's just
awful.
it's insanity. And so my daughter's coming home and she's like, I got this wrong. And stuff that I'm sorry, even I help her, we'll sit down, we'll do the homework, and I'll help her, and then she'll come back and she'll go, no, that was wrong. Not because she got the wrong answer, but because the method that she got it by was not what they wanted. So it's not helpful. It's not going to help later on in life. Again, a lot of the stuff they're using, I'm not opposed to it. But a lot of the stuff they're using, like if there's a student that's struggling with it, try it out on them. But most of the stuff they're using are things that we come naturally to. We organically kind of figure out these mental shortcuts as we're going. And instead of letting that grow organically, it's just being force-fed all at once.
do you think this is an extension of the everybody's a winner mentality?
No, I don't. So I'm not. I used to be a giant conspiracy theorist, and then one day I realized that. I just realized that there need be no overarching conspiracy, and there need be no deliberately, intentionally bad actors for this kind of situation to arise. I don't know if anybody's read Randy Balco's book about the police force.
I haven't.
I know who Balco is, yeah.
Yeah, well, he does a lot of, he used to work for Reason and Cato and stuff, and he did a thing on, so anyway, and he's got this fantastic history of how the police got screwed up, right? How they got to the militarized place they are today.
Okay.
Now, you can agree with what the police are today, or you cannot, but he's got this great, how did we get to the point where we've got SWAT teams? And it just, at each step, it's just one little thing where they go, hey, let's try tweaking this and see if that has a beneficial result. And when it doesn't, when it backfires and does the exact opposite, well-meaning as that action was, they don't get rid of it. They don't go, okay, well, that didn't work, so let's scrap it. They just, as government is wont to do, they just double down, add on another thing, and it just grows and it grows and grows. And that's kind of, before it was, before No Child Left Behind, and then that turned into Common Core, and before, there's always something that precedes it that just, they go, oh, well, it's going to happen again with Obamacare now, so
Yeah.
it's going to be, well, Obamacare sucked, but, let's keep the stuff that we like and build off of that, and I'm sure it'll be better next time, and it's just going to get worse and worse. And that's...
So they do a Krugman.
What's that?
So they do a Krugman. This didn't work, let's double down, because we didn't do it enough first time.
Right.
Yeah. So and I guess the thing that's so frustrating is that scores continue to drop.
Uh-huh.
That's right.
Yeah.
Scores continue to drop, and the kids continue to get more and more confused and more screwed and more alienated from school. Like, even when I was growing up, I flipping hated school. But
Same here.
these kids are lost now. They are floundering, and my daughter dreads going to school. It is
terrible.
something that she has a problem going to sleep at night because she's so nervous about going to school the next day.
My daughters struggle. Our daughters struggle with that a little bit too, and I know that we've had some struggles with math ourselves, but it wasn't necessarily the math itself so much as like this online program they were using, and I finally emailed the teachers and I said, if I have another weekend of this crap, I'm not doing it. We're not gonna do it.
Right.
So, I washed my hands of the whole thing, and I was super frustrated, and I literally, Jeremy and I'd be arguing with each other about it, and it was insanity. So, yeah.
It's
Well,
it's I don't know. It's just as an aside. It's kind of funny between my job and my kids going to school. I've kind of developed this contempt for software vendors because the big thing in any kind of business where your primary tool is a computer, you have software vendors pushing. They sell their really expensive software platform, and after the school or the company you work for has sunk thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, hundreds, whatever the case may be, sometimes millions, then you're stuck with it because you're not going to spend all that money and just abandon it. And these systems are just broken, just like in the case of our daughter, the math teaching tool that her school has basically purchased is just a broken piece of shit.
Well, my biggest problem with it was the logarithm for the grading. So it was like a score. It was like it scores you so many points for each question you get right, and you had to get to like 90%. Well, for every right answer, you would get 1 or 2 percentage points, but for every wrong answer, you would drop 12, 10 to 15.
Yeah.
And Ava
Oh my gosh.
Ava would literally be in a pile on the floor, crying and frustrated. And I finally just emailed the teacher. I'm like, look, I told her what was going on. I said, if I do another weekend like this, I said, we're not doing it. We're not going to do it. So, so yeah, but yeah, I understand.
This
that
isn't the
frustration.
Iowa tests.
well, I've told my son's teacher that he will not be doing any homework. 0.
Yeah, he's too young.
Because
He's too young.
Well, you should see how much he brings home.
I know. I should.
But
I recognize that
spoke
too.
with her and I said, look, he's not going to do a single bit of it. And what are you going to do? You're going to hold him back? If he knows it, he knows it, and that's that.
Yeah, and it's really not
Yeah.
necessary. It's not necessary till they reach a certain age anyway.
So she reacted okay. She's kind of my co-conspirator at this point. Not that she's fully appreciative of it, but that she's not going to stand in my way because it's brain kind of thing. But just I lay down. I think it kind of helps when you've got 16 years of Japan on your side,
Sure.
because teachers kind of look at Japan as the holy grail of teaching. It's unfounded, it's unwarranted, but that's they look at it like, oh my God, well, if this is a Japanese method, well, who the fuck am I to say, no. So,
Yeah.
and I've used that to my favor, so.
Well, yeah, the perception is in Japan they have kids doing calculus by 3rd grade. Like you said, it's probably not all true, but they're just the ideas are so advanced.
It is kind of true. They do achieve amazing results. I'll say one real quick thing, and then I'll let you guys take over because I feel like I'm again monopolizing. But so here's the problem with the Japanese school, right? I have a friend who taught English there for a while. And he walked into class one day and he said, okay, everybody stand up. And everybody stood up. And then in Japan, by the way, the teachers go from classroom to classroom. The students don't. The students always stay in one class. So he says, everybody stand up. Everybody stands up. And he says, everybody sit down. Everybody sits down. And he does it again. And they sit, stand up, they sit down. And he did it 10 times. Stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down. And then at the end of the 10 times, he just started teaching the class as usual.
Yeah.
And not only did nobody, while he was doing this, not only did nobody go, what the hell is this about? Nobody brought it up. Nobody questioned it.
Conformity
Sensei is always right.
Yeah.
If Sensei says the sky is purple, God damn it, the sky's purple, and you've just been wrong for all your whole life up until this moment.
Yeah.
Now you know better, the sky is purple. End of story. I remember when I first got there, when I was a young guy, like 3 a.m, I'm stumbling home from a bar, and I come up to a street It's red for me to cross, but it's 3 in the morning. I look up the street, there's nobody there. I look down the street, there's nobody coming. And I start walking across the street. But there's these 2 girls who are high school girls, this is the time to rebel.
Right.
They are sitting there and they are waiting for that little blue guy to light up that says, you can cross the street.
Wow.
That's the problem with Japanese schools.
The culture in general is very conformity minded, really, from what I've been told and what I've understand is just, it's just kind of ingrained in the culture, and it goes back centuries.
Sure.
Yes. So there's a popular phrase in Japan that says the peg that sticks out gets the hammer, or the nail that sticks out gets the hammer. And your job is to be as much like everybody else as possible.
Right.
So, yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, Japanese schools achieve amazing results as long as you don't mind stripping out any individuality, any kind of... I mean, they want to turn you into a calculator without personality, without anything. You regurgitate facts. You have no idea what any of it means. You have no concern about what its implication in the broader sense. You are just a fact-sucking and spitting out machine.
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
I mean, in going back to what kind of triggered the conversation is, I mean, maybe if we really start deregulating education, I mean, that would you would get to see more. I mean, because Common Core does kind of seem to lean towards the conformity model, but it's just so convoluted that it's like I said, broken from the get go. So
Well, get the feds out of it, it used to be. It used to be on a local level, and starting slowly in the 1960s, the federal government got more and more involved in education, and it was full tilt, by the late 1980s.
So when we were there, Adam, as people, were all the curriculums federally developed, do you think?
No, I think hardly any of it was. It started after I got out of high school, really. I mean, there was some federal oversight, but they didn't tell local school districts what to do.
What books to use? I mean,
no,
probably
not at all.
The
Iowa tests were used. That was kind of a national system.
Right.
Yeah,
But,
we lived in Iowa, so we used those.
I did some cursory, just some little brief bit of research today because there was the mention that the Department of Education was formed in 1979 under the Carter administration.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, it's inconsequential if we were to scrap the Department of Education. I mean, there has been federal regulation for about exactly 150 years of education in the United States. I mean, it was a lot more laissez-faire prior to Carter creating the Department of Education. You had the Office of I don't know. I'd have to look up the article again.
ACW.
Yeah, the ACW.
Right?
Yeah.
Health, education, and welfare.
Yeah. There was that, but between that was from 1967 until 1979, and then prior to that there was, and it started in 1867, the Office of Education, I believe, or Office of Education and something. I'd have to look it up again. So I mean, the federal regulation of schools is I mean, at this point it's an American tradition, but the real heavily regulated top-down legislation is relatively new historically. So
Yes, it is. I always say the best thing the government schools ever taught me was how to read, because once I could read, I could learn anything else.
Yep.
yeah.
Right? So if I can read a math book, I can learn math. If I can read a history book, I can learn history. So reading to me is the most important of the 3 R's.
Totally.
Absolutely. Now, I lost my train of thought.
Do you have anything you want to add there, Curran?
No, not offhand. I'm just curious about what functions the Department of Education performs that can't be performed by the states. And I haven't looked into too much detail in regards to
I think
what their the budget, if my memory serves me correctly, is about $20 billion a year. Now, are they providing student loans? What's the structure of it? I mean, what is their function and why is it necessary?
Right.
If they're talking about eliminating the department, there's going to be people that will say, well, it does this, and without it, that won't work. So what is the counter to that?
So I think, and this is just my gut intuition, if you tried to kill it today, I think the biggest concern would be, well, then who's going to stop Alabama from teaching everybody that God made us?
Mm-hmm.
You know, yes, the states used to do this, but then, you know, Skokes, and who's going to prevent Alabama from just telling all the children that Mickey Mouse and God made it all happen?
Right.
And that seems to be the argument that people are afraid. That's why there needs to be federal control.
But I think there would be enough opposition in practically any state, including in the Deep South. I mean, you've got plenty of leftists down here. I'm in Georgia.
Oh yeah.
And I
people
really
send
don't
their
think.
kids- I mean, people are already sending the Christians. They're sending them to Christian schools.
Yeah.
I mean, I taught at a Christian school in the 80s. I mean, so the opportunity to teach them that shit is still there in spite of the state, you know, being a huge overriding thing. It isn't like they're not allowed to do that now.
Well,
One thing we
exactly,
haven't
but-
mentioned yet, and we'll probably get to it, are the teachers' unions.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, that was the primary opposition to the law.
Sure.
Especially here in Michigan. It was over a letter writing campaign at Calvin College, where DeVos graduated from, and had 2,000 individuals sign a letter opposing DeVos because they didn't want her to be in charge of the Department of Education because of her strong views on charter schools, because they are a counter to the teachers' union.
Sure they
That's
are.
why there's such animosity towards her. And it really had nothing to do with skill set. It had strictly to do with she will be someone who would come in and say, there's an alternative to the public school system. And that's what they don't want. They want a monopoly on the educational system of the U.S. For a long time, the teachers unions and the school system were mocking homeschooling. And there's strengths and weaknesses to homeschooling. But from the students I've interacted with, the parents, there's a lot of schools out there now for homeschooling where the students are coming out with actually a better education than the public school system is giving other students. So this whole brouhaha about DeVos being incompetent, and I've seen a lot of stuff on, especially on leftist sites, just saying she can't do the job, because it's really not true. I mean, anyway, that's kind of my take on it. Like the whole thing is the unions are just against it because they don't want any competition. They want to go back to having strictly where things are, where they strictly get the money, and they don't want any questioning or bring up an alternative.
Right.
So
anybody ever see Waiting for Superman?
I have not.
Yes. Wait, refresh my memory.
It's a documentary by the same guy who made the Inconvenient Truth movie. And so I was expecting it to
about
be
the schools.
Yeah, I was
charter
expecting
schools.
it to be a pretty liberal screed, and he came out in total opposition to the teachers union, and pretty much in total favor of the charter schools.
Really?
So I was pleasantly shocked by that.
How old is the film?
I mean, I want to say I probably saw it about 4 or 5 years ago when it came out, but I mean, it's still perfectly relevant.
Sure.
Still a worthwhile read.
So I'm glad that we shifted the topic to charter schools, because I mean, I probably one of the most basic concerns about people that would, are in support of the Department of Education model, and deregulation is, of course, it's no such thing as a free lunch. We all pay with it for our taxes, but parents don't have to pay up front to send their kids to public school. You just enroll them, and then you pay indirectly through your property taxes and what have you. So
Everybody does. Yeah.
right. So I mean, I guess
They have children
I mean
or not.
the worry is okay, well, people can't afford to pay tuition for their kids. There's plenty of families that
That's
can't.
Well,
Yeah.
that's how I have a problem with that. That's saying that a person can't set aside so much money a month to pay for their own children, that they don't value the education of their own children. Even a few years back here in Michigan, I wasn't here at the time. The parents were complaining because the school didn't have the money to get busted. They complained that they would have to pay a little money out of their own pocket to bus their own kids to a school that where the kids got the education paid for, the parents didn't. This whole situation where it's free, people bought that line that they don't have to pay anything because it's public, it's free, it's a free good. That's something that has been indoctrinated into a lot of people. Maybe the parents should have to pay something. I mean, even a small part, realize there are costs associated with it. It's not free.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Right.
having skin in the game would get people more involved in their kids' education and what kind of education they're getting as well. I mean, if you have if it's not your skin in the game, I mean, other than your kids, obviously, but if it's not your money, then I'm sure they're doing a good job. I'll just push it on down the road.
Yeah.
And the number of kids people have. I mean, some people send 12 children to public school and they pay nothing more in their property taxes than someone who has one child. And that's or someone that has 0 children, like I always bitch about.
Yeah.
And
So
let's
it's a
not
totally
forget,
equitable system. Totally.
and let's not forget that charter schools, while they outperform standard government schools, are still part of the government school system.
They are.
So they're not private. And I don't know if anyone's heard of this entrepreneur named Bob Luddy, who started these private schools. I listened to a podcast with Tom Woods.
Oh, the ones out in West
He
Virginia?
started these private schools.
The ones in West Virginia or North Carolina?
Where are they?
They're in a few places.
Okay.
But what's really great about them, other than that they outperform public schools, is that they can do it for less money than regular private schools, and I mean considerably less. I mean like a third or a fourth what you'd pay as far as tuition goes.
I think I saw some advertisement that was on TV where the cost would be from grade 6 through 12 would be $6,500 a year, and I've compared that to the public school education system here in Michigan. It costs $11,200 per student for students to go to public school. So it's almost half the cost.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, philanthropy would probably pick up a lot of the slack for poor parents. I mean, think about it. Think about if you're the owner of a huge corporation that makes billions of dollars. You're going to take a long view about a lot of things, and you're probably thinking, I need to make sure that there's an educated workforce to fill the positions that I need to keep my company productive. I'm going to pay for kids to go to school. So that is how a lot of when schools were largely private, that's how a lot of kids were educated. History kind of looks unfavorably upon the Carnegies and the robber barons of the late 1800s, early 1900s, but they invested millions of those dollars in that time, which would be billions today,
Billions now. Right.
in education.
Mm-hmm.
They
In
did.
other areas,
I mean,
How soon
a lot of the colleges
Right.
were started, by people like that.
Yeah.
And without those benefactors, they would never have started. So
Yeah,
it
'cause
can
colleges
trickle down.
were-
There's no reason why it can't be grade schools. And I think you'd have the Gates, starting schools, and Oprah has already done that. Remember when she went
Oh, yeah.
overseas or to Africa and started a girls' school?
Mhm.
I mean, you would have that if there was a threat to poor kids getting education. I truly believe that people would step forward.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
they definitely. Well, and like we talked about in another Skypecast, how you always have. I mean, where the government really fails in helping people, private individuals always do.
They do.
They do.
And they do a better job and at less cost.
Yep. I know I was thinking about that libertarian school that one guy had created. I think he might have a couple too, and I think I might have confused them with the ones you were talking about, Adam. So, but yeah, I'll have to look into that one time, and we'll talk about that.
I'll post the link to the Tom Woods
Yeah,
podcast.
I'd like to
My
see that.
question is, how long before the brick and mortar government schools go away and kids start learning online? It's going to be a lot less expensive. Of course, they will lose out in terms of, socializing, but I guess they can figure a way out of that. But,
Well, and socializing can be overrated too at times.
Mm-hmm.
So, especially when
So
you think about how bad some of the public school systems are for kids who go there, bullying and
Yeah.
quality
I
of
mean, homeschoolers-
education is,
The
So
homeschool
the biggest
started a pretty good network of social stuff, like field trips and families get together and pool. I did actually a homeschool lesson for a group of homeschoolers on terrarium making, like a few summers ago. Somebody in my gardening group was homeschooling like 7 or 8 kids, and I went and did a program for them for nothing, just for fun.
Mm-hmm.
So those things, there's a lot of organic opportunities that are just not tapped because they don't have to be.
Yeah.
So I think the thing that would excite me the most about the evolution of when it dies is, I think one of the things that annoys me about a lot of homeschoolers, particularly if they're religious homeschoolers.
Sure.
Yep, that's where I have my problems
I want
too.
school, but I want God in it. And
Yep.
Yeah.
whatever. I'm not here to condemn them. But the thing that annoys me the most about that is they replicate it down to the schedule, and 45 minutes, and then here's
Mhm.
it. They replicate it, and then they just add another subject which is God.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it annoys me to no end because what I would love to do, if I was financially able to, what I would love to do is just kind of, I guess it's usually called unschooling. And it's just,
Yeah.
hey, if you want to study math all day today, let's do that. In fact, if you want to do a month of just math, let's do a month of just math. There's this. So my daughter asked why 1,000 times, right? I mean, kids want to know stuff.
Yeah. Our
It's
daughter
not
does
until
the
they
same
get
thing.
into the school that the school system tells them, shut the hell up. We'll tell you what you need to know.
Oh,
And if
yeah.
we don't tell you,
Right,
then you didn't need to know it. So
That's
stop
right.
asking
Yep.
why. We'll tell you. And then they just stop it. They just
Right.
And our species evolved to survive by learning. We are naturally an inquisitive species.
Mm-hmm.
And it just ticks me
Uh-huh.
off that it takes the school system
Right.
to come in and say, shut the fuck up, kid.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's
If
such
we
a
don't
good
tell
point.
it to you, you don't need to know it. And then they just shut down. Because there's
Think
always
about-
this assumption that if we don't teach them, how are they going to
That's
do
right.
math? I hear
think-
this all the time. It's like, because they'll want to know.
Yes.
And then eventually, they're going to specialize in what they love to do the most. That's natural.
If
And in fact,
we all
encourage
look
that in
back,
college.
if we all look back on the teachers that we had from grades 1 through 12 and even during college, how many of those teachers really made a lasting impact on our lives? How many?
3.
About 3, yeah. That's same for me.
Same here, probably.
I think
But
my
they
answer
made
is
a
0.
hell of an impact.
Yeah, my answer is
Nope.
0 as well. I can't think of one single teacher that made a real impact on me. Not one.
Yeah. I think all of us
I
here
have
are
to.
kind of autodidactic, and people in general. And like what you mentioned, John, is the things I know most about and the things that any of us know most about, a lot of times they're self-taught, and it's just becoming obsessed with the topic and then pouring just hours for days, weeks in a row into that subject, and you become an expert on it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
do.
I mean, and have any of you stopped?
Nope.
Nope.
Right. I mean, we all keep going, right? I mean, I read books on my interests voraciously still.
Me too.
I still
And-
ask why. I
I couldn't survive without it. I mean,
But
it
not
is.
everybody is like us. They really aren't. And my
No.
sister is an example of that. She is the most shallow, superficial learner. Like, the only things that interest her are just like ridiculous things. And if I even bring up talking to her about anything like politics or anything, she becomes anxious and irritable and just, I don't want to learn that. I don't care. So there's
So
a lot of
what
people
is
out there
she interested in, though?
cooking, making cookies.
Oh, how sweet.
I mean,
No, but I mean,
She has her virtues.
but like,
but I guess what
But
I'm
on
trying to
the
say is,
cookies,
nothing wrong with that.
so I mean, she
Managing-
could have gotten into cooking, though.
Right. I mean, she used to be an like she was an art major, so she's very creative, but she doesn't do any of it. And I guess she doesn't seek knowledge. She just does stupid stuff all day.
I know a lot of people
I don't
like
know how
that.
to describe it. And
What's
she
that?
micromanages her child's life to the point where her daughter is completely ruined.
She's living vicariously through her child.
That's right.
The masses are asses for good reason. Yeah, they really are.
How much
She
of
hated school. I mean, she was the kid that my parents had to continuously ride to do her homework, to not, she wouldn't start the project till 10 o'clock the night before it was due. And if she had her choice, she would never have tried to learn anything from school. She just didn't. She'd work hours on the homecoming posters in the garage, but just would resist studying history or whatever. So, and she doesn't read anything but just stupid novels now. I don't think she reads any kind of nonfiction at all. So how would she, if humans are just always left to their own learning devices, not everybody would be like we are. You'd have a shitload of dumbasses out there that couldn't do anything. But then, I guess,
But we've
evolutionarily,
already got that.
But we so A,
They're
yeah,
already here.
A, we've already got that. B, we're making an assumption that, and I know this is kind of like the common libertarian refrain. At least I have to resort to this a lot, and I know I get flack for it. But who's to say they would be like that if they hadn't gone through the government school
you're right.
system, though?
And I thought that after I just said that.
And and I guess I'm going to kind of go inside with Mike Rowe at this point. It's like the world needs garbage men.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
How much-
right.
Seriously,
Somebody's gotta make
not
the French
everybody's going to be
fries.
the rocket scientist. The world legitimately needs
They need
garbage men.
people to make cookies.
right?
Well,
There's
and
nothing wrong with that job.
Not
There's
at
nothing,
all.
I mean,
No,
there's nothing
there
to
isn't.
say that, oh, you're not giving to. I hate when people are like, what are you contributing to society? Fuck you. That's what I'm contributing to society.
that's none of
Yeah.
your damn business.
It's none of your business. I hate
Right.
when people
Yeah.
kind of
That's
have this attitude of,
I
what
know.
are you
Well,
contributing?
Some people just aren't curious. That's
They
just in their nature. That's the way they're wired.
See, and I used to
Right.
think I was that way too. Like I said, I really wasn't inspired by any of my teachers, but all throughout elementary school and high school, I just felt bored. Like I don't know, I never really connected with anything. And it wasn't until I went to college that I really, I got out into the world on my own and then went to college. That's when I'm like, oh, okay, no, I'm really interested in all this stuff. So
That's kind of bizarre. You mean when you had some control and over
exactly,
your life and what you learned, you became interested again?
exactly.
See, and that's what I'm saying is how much of schooling is about prestige. Here's it's a good example, but I mean, it's the best example that I could think of off the top of my head, and I hate to bring it up because it could kind of derail the discussion completely. But I'm sure at least a few of you are familiar with the YouTuber Sargon of Akkad.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Yes.
he
I think you made me familiar with him.
okay.
Someone posted.
I have you to
I
blame.
didn't know about him until someone posted one of his videos in the group.
So anyway, one of his videos was him having a debate with, and I can't remember, but she is a professor of gender studies or whatever. And basically her counter to a majority of his arguments was, well, you don't have academic credentials. So what are you?
Right.
So what do you have to be? What does your position matter? I mean, you don't have a leg to stand on because you don't have this degree and you don't have this accreditation. And
Anybody familiar with John Taylor Gatto?
No.
I am not. No.
I won't. I'll post something later on in them.
Right.
Because he has an answer to that.
Okay, but I mean, yeah, the point is, I mean, it was a discussion about the merits of feminism, and that's a whole other rabbit hole we can go down to. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it seems to be a lot of. I mean, the thing that most people get out of schooling and education is the prestige. I have a doctorate, or I have a PhD, or I'm an expert in this field because I've studied it formally, and I have this diploma hanging up on my wall in a frame that shows that I have been educated on this topic. Who's to say, though, that, I mean, okay, let's just take, in the example that I give, let's take Sargon out of the equation. Who's to say that the professor that he was debating is more qualified than someone that is interested in feminism on their own and studies it in their own time?
That's right.
Agreed. And the academics with the degrees, they've put us where we are today. They've put us in this situation where we are now. You can't blame it on the people that don't have the authority, that don't have the degrees, because they're not the ones in the positions of power.
Absolutely.
Still kind of a fan of the those who can't do teach.
And those who can't teach Jim.
That's right. That's the rest of that.
But isn't
right.
that what they want? They want the PhDs and all that, certain ones with prestige. They want the power, the control more over society, so they can guide society where they think it should go.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of people believing it because they have a certain degree that they are all knowledgeable in all subjects. So they are the authority to go to, whereas it's a false analogy because an individual can study to be proficient at one small sliver of knowledge, but he can be a complete ignorant ass when it comes to anything outside of their subject matter.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
it's higher and deeper is what a PhD is if you're not careful. Unfortunately, most people buy it. It's like going to the doctor and thinking the doctor knows all sorts of things, but the doctor's knowledge is limits of human research and stuff that a person can do. You have to be very careful of what that person says and whether or not they actually have the authority and have the knowledge.
I think
Exactly.
I think Ben Carson is a good example of someone that can be stupid for a brain surgeon.
Oh, I know that guy. It's like what the hell?
He only wanted to be president.
And then he forgot about running.
But wait a minute, Trump's president. What am I saying?
Yeah, I never ran for president. What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
I don't remember running for president at all. What are you?
No, but I mean, no, that's an excellent point, though. I mean, nobody's going to call him an idiot. And I mean, he's a brain. I mean, it's like rocket science.
He's obviously intelligent.
He's obvious. Well, I mean, but it's a select kind of
It
intelligence.
is.
Exactly.
Very,
I mean,
I had it.
and that's why doctors can believe in creationism, because they're not all experts and they haven't studied evolution. I mean, some of them, they can compartmentalize their knowledge.
I had a nurse tell me once, I never forgot this. She said, doctors know what they know and not much else.
That's very true.
That is.
Mm-hmm. Basically, any expert in a field, it's. I mean, Stephen Hawking talked about how these days there's no. I mean, in the burgeoning days of science, there were just scientists because they were kind of jacks of all trades about all kinds of different fields of study. Now, I mean, he talked about he was basically saying you no longer have scientists. You have physicists, you have chemists, you have geologists. Yeah. And on down the line. and then even those fields of study are like broken up into even more exacting disciplines.
excuse me, where's our grammar Nazi? Did I not hear tell that we had a grammar
Betsy.
amongst
I
us?
Betsy.
am, but what did I
We
miss?
certainly
I
do.
am too.
And she is correcting our grammar silently. You can't hear her, but she's doing it.
Okay.
Did Jeremy make a mistake? Chemicists?
Chemicists. Yes.
Chemicists. That's not grammar. That's just me having a poor grasp of the English language.
Wow.
Not to be confused with proctologists.
When's Kramer?
They're podiatrists.
That's a good one. I like that one.
You can just basically consider me the George W. Bush of the group. He liked to make up words like that too.
Oh no, I would never say that.
You got to do is laugh now, Jeremy.
I have too much respect for you.
Sorry, did try to derail.
It's hilarious.
Strategery.
I love it.
I know that brain surgeons and millionaire businessmen can live in harmony together with the fish.
Now, another point, and actually this, before we started our Skype discussion, I've been on a big Joe Rogan kick lately, so I've been pouring back through past episodes, and I was watching an episode from a few years ago. Dr. Carl Hart, who was a scientist at basically dispelling a lot of myths about drug abuse and the drug trade, and they were talking about the consequences of deregulation, decriminalization of drugs. It's going to basically create kind of it's really going to disrupt that job market in law enforcement, and the same thing would apply to deregulation of education. It could really seriously disrupt that job market.
Sure.
So, I mean, and that's probably one of the biggest pushbacks against any sort of deregulation, whether it's education, law enforcement, you name it.
That's life.
That is life. I mean, Caterpillar just, is firing people left and right in my area, and it's all about, I mean, the world doesn't exist for the worker. The world exists for the consumer.
Yes.
Yeah, look what happened to the horse and buggy.
Right.
The automobile
I mean, you
came about.
you just can't stop progress for an employee. I mean, it just doesn't, but of course they're going to fight tooth and nail because then that gets back to the unions.
Well, look at the example of Reagan and deregulation of the airlines in the early '80s. Now, the analogy is it's gonna be horrible for the job market for people involved in airlines. That analogy didn't pan out that way. It actually exploded. So
Right.
who says that by deregulating the education system in the U.S. that it won't create a lot more demand for teaching?
I mean, they're still going to need teachers.
Yeah.
You cannot teach in Michigan. Even though I know the subject, I could teach geology, that's not a problem. But because of their requirements, it's so regulated, only people who go into it specifically and go through those credentials and can be certified are allowed to teach. A person could have a PhD and not be able to teach at a high school.
Right.
Yep.
You're right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the stumbling blocks that the government always puts in, is that they want to tell you what you have to do to be qualified when it doesn't even mean you're qualified if you jump through their hoops. Because
it's more with the unions, it's more about controlling the labor market to get, basically in my opinion, this is just mine, it's more rent seeking than anything to get higher wages than what they could. It's also, has been used to discriminate against minorities in the past.
Yeah.
right.
So there is some negative history associated with it. But myself, I'm very anti-union, but that's just my opinion.
No, I am too. I hate them.
I don't know about you guys, but I have met some really dense government school teachers.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I remember him from
A
being
while
in school.
ago, I was at a dinner with a school teacher. I think she's K through 12, been teaching for 30, 35 years. And so I asked her, has the trigger warnings and safe zones that we hear about in the universities, has that trickled down to the public schools?
It's going to if it hasn't already.
But her answer was, "Oh yeah, we've got metal detectors in the schools now." I kid you not. Thank you very much. Well, I've got to get going now and get back on planet Earth. Yeah, she thought I was talking about weapons. That's how out of it she is.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
That's hilarious.
That is a true story.
Wow.
So you didn't educate her on what?
No,
it's
I
really
wasn't
like?
even going to get into it. Not at that point.
That's funny.
So, let's see what are some other current events since we've.
And Trump, and I posted this, one of Trump's promises was to eliminate or greatly reduce, that he said we really don't have a need for the Department of Education anymore. So I think that's going to go by the wayside, like now Obamacare is tabled for the next year because he suddenly found more important things to do. Obamacare was his number one priority, right? Ending that. And now he says, you know what? I think I've got some other things. We can leave that for a year.
I didn't hear him that he had said that.
Yeah,
that what he's gonna do?
I think he said he's tabling it and getting back to it.
Oh, wow.
I mean, is that surprising to anybody?
No,
Not
at all.
necessarily. Yeah,
I
not
don't
really.
think it could. I mean, I think doing something abruptly with it would be just foolish, maybe. I mean,
But
there's
here-
so much.
Here's what I'm finding, and I'd like folks to chime in on this. I find people making excuses for Trump like I've never heard people making excuses for Obama or W. I mean, there was a guy today on a Liberty Talk radio program who said that that Trump is not going to cut government spending because he wants to fight this cabal, right? That wants to maintain our existing financial system because they profit from it. So if he cuts government spending, he's playing right into their hands. I mean, it's amazing the lengths that these people will go to give Trump an alibi.
Wow.
I mean, it didn't make sense. You know, he's saying things like, Trump wants to fight the cabal. He wants to maintain our existing system because they profit from it. And one of the reasons there's so much confrontation and opposition to things Trump is doing, because he's working for a different behind-the-scenes government that runs the world, basically.
What?
Yeah.
That's Illuminati crap.
That's Alex Jones, one of Trump's biggest supporters. I'd like to actually kind of ask the group, because I've seen prior to the election a lot of libertarian support for Trump, and even I think I've noticed a growth in it after the fact of him being president. And I'm wondering, I guess, you know, what each of us would cite as our biggest criticism of Trump. What's wrong with Donald Trump? And I mean, you know, we can. I mean, whoever wants
10
to.
hours?
Well, I don't think any of us were fooled by him.
No.
No, but
I don't think so.
I think there's an aspect that we were told by the media that the polls say that Trump's going to lose, he can't win. Obama coming out and say he will never be president. We sold this whole bill idea that Trump won't be president. Republicans are most likely going to lose one of the House in the Congress, so they're probably going to lose control. We're going to have Hillary for the next 4 years. He's got this great agenda and all that, so we were hearing that. And then there's the aspect that Trump won, and the liberals were all nauseous and sick about it. And
Which
so
we took
libertarians are
pleasure in.
sitting going, what the heck's going on? So there's this honeymoon period, I guess, with certain libertarians because they're in shock right now, and they're hoping that Trump will do something positive, and there's this burden taken off in regards to what they thought they're going to have to deal with the social agenda from the left, and now it's not there. So that's why I think certain libertarians at least giving Trump the benefit of the doubt at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's a great description of it.
That's a great point, because we were prepared to fight a very leftist agenda over the next 4 years, and then we got Trump instead. I wouldn't call Trump a real conservative, I guess.
No.
But he's not a leftist either.
Right.
He's just kind of a loose cannon that goes off in every direction.
But a lot of prominent libertarians were on the Trump bandwagon well before he won the election.
Certainly.
I mean,
But I
even
think
a year before.
I think it just boils down to the better of two evils. I really do.
I don't know. I mean,
not with everybody, but with some of them. I mean, I was relieved that Trump won. I also admit it right here. I was much relieved because Hillary, to me, I would much rather deal with him and what he's going to do than go down the complete Marxist, leftist, socialist road.
Yeah, I was too. And then as soon as he won, I went, uh-oh.
Yeah. So Betty,
so I kind of wasn't like against him winning. But that's kind of just my Joker side in me, you know. I just watched the system burn kind of thing.
That was why I was happy he won, because I was.
But at the same time, now that the system's burning, I don't know. You know, I mean, the presumption was is a phoenix going to come out of this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm not
sure that the system is
come out of
burning.
this.
I think it's business as usual. I think every day that goes by just lets us know that it's. I mean, look, he's stacking the deck with all these neocons. It might as well be George W. in the White House again.
Yeah, that's true.
It's true.
And I just want to know when these I call them prominent libertarians, Lou Rockwell, Tom Woods, and the guy from antiwar.com, Justin, how do you pronounce his name, Raimondo?
Yeah.
When are they going to plead buyer's remorse at this point? Now, Paul Craig Roberts, who's not a libertarian, he's a Republican, has come out and said, oops, I made a mistake about Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I don't think there's been enough time yet to really see how this is all going to play out. I mean, it's only been one month.
Right. We need a little more time, but it sure isn't looking good.
Yeah.
Based on his appointees and some of the nonsense he's doing, some of the reckless things that he's not giving things a lot of thought.
Right.
Well, and
very
what,
reactionary.
What helped him win the presidency was that, he said exactly what he wanted to say, and that was part of what he told his campaign team. Is you have to let me say exactly what I want to say when I'm on the campaign trail, and that really worked to his advantage during the election. But now it's not really. It's not. It's kind of starting to be at his disadvantage at this point. So.
It's not what a statement would do.
Yeah,
he's just not the anti-establishment candidate,
and he's not diplomatic enough either. He's not diplomatic enough either. It's like you have to have some level of tact.
About the world and the world leaders in the way, is he going to get us into a massive war just because he's, mouthing off?
Yeah.
His war policy is. So far, just like Obama's, he's continuing to drop the same bombs
in the same places,
same countries.
Mm-hmm. I think my biggest beef with Trump is, I have to admit it. I love globalization. It's why electronics are affordable. It's why a lot of things are affordable. It's why we have the luxuries that we have in modern life is thanks to globalization. And Trump is just vehemently opposed to globalization with all his wanting to, stop the flow of immigration, the border wall, the tariffs,
Yeah,
etc.
but he's not alone in that, though. I mean,
No,
that's what's
no.
so scary.
No,
is
he's
that
not. There's plenty of
left
people.
or right,
Mm-mm.
both sides were unanimous in one thing in this whole election, and that was that free trade and globalization has got to go.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the scary thing.
Populism was basically the theme behind the 2016 presidential election. I mean, that was Bernie Sanders' position. I mean, Hillary got her way and got the nomination, but she had to adopt a lot of Sanders' positions to stay relevant and get the Democratic votes. And Trump has been a populist from day one of announcing his candidacy. So yeah, and that's what and that's a central theme to populism is to be kind of isolationist,
And nationalist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And putting America first is not necessarily good for all Americans.
It's going to hurt some Americans.
As you just pointed out, with I don't like to call it globalization, but really a free market, an open free market.
Right.
Yeah.
It's America first. Well, what does that mean?
Right.
Does that mean what do we have to sacrifice for that? And is that a good thing? Is that in the best interest of the American citizen and the American consumer, as you just alluded to?
Well, I always like to, whenever somebody brings up that, it's hurting our economy, blah, 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 I always ask why they don't implement that at the border of Alabama then. Those people will work for less than people in New York City.
Right.
This is true.
We should put trade barriers between Alabama and the northern states because wages are suppressed in the South and they're taking the job. So, and then you watch their kind of arguments start to fall apart.
Right.
Yeah.
And a border is just an imaginary line in the sand, and it doesn't really make a difference that if it's a state border or a national border and.
Like it or
I
not,
say let the goods be made by those who will do it the cheapest and the quality that we like.
It's like it or not, it's a global economy.
It is.
Right. You can't turn it off at this point.
How are you going to bring back manufacturing jobs to America? How are you going to rebuild the American steel industry? It'd be great if we could, but I don't see it happening.
And again, the unions are going to be a problem with that too, because it's obviously wages are going to result in much higher prices for products. And so then it's going to hurt the poor because they won't be able to afford things.
Yep.
I mean, it circles around.
Yep. It'll be just like it was in the past.
That's right.
We don't need to bring the steel mills back, and we don't need to be manufacturing
Everything here.
calculators and pencils and stuff.
The garment industry is one that I heard. I can't remember what podcast, but they were talking about you just cannot bring the garment industry back here.
No.
Right.
There's just no possibility that all the countries that will make clothes for the price that they do, it's just not going to be possible to do that here.
Manufacturing in the United States is all about durable goods and precision instruments. That's what we're good at now, and we've basically lost the infrastructure to, like you said, make clothing or
those staples
Yeah.
that used to be made in sweatshops in New York City and Los Angeles, and now they're made at, pennies on the dollar in other countries, but those people need jobs. I mean, one of the stupid things about people that hate Walmart because they oppress their manufacturing employees is that, okay, let's pull all those factories out of Sri Lanka and those places. Where do those people go to work? They go back to scraping a living off the land.
Yeah.
Living a primitive life, starving. You know what I mean? It's all relative.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, and Americans aren't ready to pay 40 or 50% more for something than they're used to.
They're not.
So I got a guy a friend of mine that rails against Walmart, and yet he's got stock in it. He's got stock in Walmart.
Yeah.
Hey,
So
come on.
hypocritical. I mean,
Yes.
gosh.
And it is. It's like, people, back in the day, like when our grandparents were, growing up, they made a lot of their own clothes. That's
did.
why, only garments can be, nice garments were, were bought by people who had money. It's like,
That's right.
I don't think they realized the quality of life differential there's going to be for certain things. It's without a free market.
That's right, exactly. And I mean, I think too, like, okay, say we shut down businesses and industries overseas and bring it all back to America. Why is it more important for an American family to do well than it is for a family in China to do well? I mean, when you look at just human beings, Americans are all about, like, you got to help the people here, and I'm patriotic and all that, and I don't want to see my neighbors lose their jobs and starve, but is the suffering that someone does here so much worse than what it would do to some other group of people in another country? I mean, that's kind of I've had that thought, we value our family units so much, but it's only because it's us.
Right.
It's a tribe thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side, we couldn't wait until these communist countries fell so that they could adopt democracy and free market values. And then when they did, they
Now
started to
they're
beat us at our own game.
Yeah. And now we got to stop them because they're doing it better than we are.
Yeah, look at Russia, how it used to be and how it is now.
Satisfied.
Nope. It's such a weird dynamic.
So would you say the worst policy of Trump is the trade policy, where the tariffs? And my fear with Trump is he starts a tariff of 20-30%. Then other countries, well, if you're tacking on 20-30%, we'll tack on 20-30%. And before you know it, you got the same thing that went on in the early 30s, where you have high tariffs, shuts down trade, jobs shut down, and then it leads to people out of work, and then it leads to a situation where you have dictators that come into power.
And an economic collapse like you saw with the Great Depression. And I mean, really, trade tariffs right now could potentially be really disastrous, because if you look at the numbers for the Dow Jones or the NASDAQ, whatever, the markets are they're probably due for a bubble to burst. I mean,
They're in a bit of a bubble right now, yes.
So if you time that along with implementing really high trade tariffs, you could be looking at a severe recession that would probably make the recession of 2007 and 8 look like child's play, which would be just disastrous.
Because the consumer is the one who's going to pay for all that.
And there are economists out there that are warning about that. Peter Schiff, I mean, if you listen to him, and there's another guy, he has the boom, gloom, and doom report or something, and there are people that are cautioning all this, the rise of the market, but you look at the debt and all these other factors that play into the economy and the financial markets, and it's not all looking good. And I think the tariff thing is a good point.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, with the Dow, above 20,000 and continuing to rise with no end in sight. I mean, there is an end in sight, and I think you can see the tension.
There's always an end.
Well, you can see the tension, and I think there's a bubble that's going to burst probably in the next couple of years. I mean, I'm no economist; I can't predict it accurately, but I would imagine.
You're an economist.
Nobody can.
No.
People
Economists could predict that they'd be rich.
Yeah,
Right.
and they were saying the day, if you went back and looked at some of the people talking on CNBC, like the day before the Dow collapsed in 2007, I guess it was.
Yeah.
They had no idea that was going to happen. They were pontificating about different companies, and I think the next quarter and they had no idea it was coming. And they're the experts.
Peter Schiff did. Peter Schiff had it down. And they
Kyle
laughed
Bass,
at him.
There's a hedge fund guy named Kyle Bass in Texas that knew that hedged against the mortgage market and made billions. And he went to some of the politicians and or to the Treasury and warned them about what was going on with the mortgage stuff, and he could see it coming, and so he just built a hedge fund and hedged against the whole U.S. mortgage market, and then it collapsed, and he's like 35 years old, and it's really amazing.
Yeah.
Did you see the movie The Big Short?
I did watch that.
Oh, that was good.
I did. That was so good.
If you've looked at market trends over an extended period of time, we're due for another recession before the end of the decade. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
How bad it is and when it's going to
hard
happen
know because
exactly.
there can be a hefty correction, and then it'll come back. So that's what's tricky, is that you just never know how it's going to play out.
But the problem, like in 2008, they didn't allow the correction to happen.
That's
they didn't
right.
allow the firms that need to go bankrupt to go bankrupt.
Yeah.
They didn't let the market correct. They wanted to keep the bubble going, so they kind of reinflated it. So now you have firms that double down. And you have firms that went out of business. So you have these firms that, when the bubble bursts, and if they truly let it burst, because they're going to have less ability with the amount of debt to be able to do stuff with, then it's going to be severe. It's going to be far worse because the lumps weren't taken when they should have been taken.
And the Treasury came in and pumped all that money in, which was ridiculous.
And the only thing I can see, if it does happen again, that's what will happen. They will inflate the currency to the point where they probably will lose control of being able to do anything with the currency. And they're going to be in deep trouble. So it could be the 1930s all over again if they aren't careful.
Exactly.
It's the same playbook being used, and who's going to suffer? The American public. Unfortunately, the way I see it, at least in the 30s, there were a lot more people living on the farms, a lot more resiliency associated with society. Now, with just-in-time delivery, with a bunch of the masses, I see there's being less people that are less resilient in regards, and what happens then?
Chaos. Anarchy.
It's concerning me because the people will demand security and safety, and they'll put up with anything.
Exactly.
I want to ask if it. I mean, is it a little bizarre to you when you see Trump go into Carrier Corporation or Ford Motor Company, and he has a little meeting with them, and he comes out, and all of a sudden they're changing their tune about moving out of the country?
I do find that
a little
disturbing.
Isn't it? It's
that's
really
not the free market. That's
it's fascism.
That's corporate. I mean, that's
it's management through intimidation or legislation through intimidation.
Through promises.
Yeah, I don't know what he's promising them.
Yeah, exactly. It might not be intimidation.
Or how what is he doing?
Let's quit pro quo. There has to be something going on. I mean, they're getting something out of it.
That's right.
Well, with Carrier, there was a rumor that since Carrier is owned by a company that has a lot of military contracts, that Trump threatened to pull those military contracts if they left the country. You know, if they built that plant. Who knows?
Who knows?
But that's definitely not a free market.
It is not. And the people, and actually Carrier wasn't even all that many jobs saved, was it?
No.
Yeah,
maybe 1,000.
So that was his first move, really, when he got into office, wasn't it? Just about,
yeah.
Well,
He goes in there, and he made a. That's the thing. What was the state? What was it? Indiana.
Right.
Had supposedly the same deal on the table for months or a year or whatever, and Carrier never bought it. And then Trump goes in there, and 45 minutes later, they take the deal.
Art of the deal. That's.
I mean, it's very Don Corleone.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
Hit her time, right?
Yep, we are at time, so I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up the recording here.
It's been a great discussion.
Yeah, for sure. How cool. All right. All right, well, we'll end the recording here, and we'll see you next week.